Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guest is Brad Olsen. Before I bring him on, a couple of announcements. Coming March 11th, 12th, and 13th this year, Forbidden Knowledge News Con, our third annual. We're going to be featuring 8 badass presenters. It's going to be online with a Rokfin premium membership, and that means you get the entire conference for only $10. All you have to do is sign up through the Rokfin link in the description. You get access to not only the conference, but all our premium content and all the content from every creator on Rokfin. And you can always get new episodes free on Rokfin. You can get them on Odysee and all podcast platforms. And definitely check out all the podcasts that we feature on the Forbidden Knowledge Network. You get those on our website. That's forbiddenknowledge.news. And follow us on Facebook. All those links are right there in the description for you. And guys, what does Big Pharma fear most? It fears you being healthy and not being dependent and part of the perpetual cycle of being poisoned by Big Pharma and our medical industry. Break yourself free and check out what may be the most powerful antioxidant known to man. C60 Pro Power is amazing. The benefits have been personally outstanding, but you need to check out for yourself. Do your own research. Click the link in the description and check out their website. If you order with that link, you're going to get 10% off plus free shipping. Guys, what is your health worth to you? Today, I want to welcome back to the show Brad Olsen. He's an award-winning author, book publisher, and event producer. His keynote presentations and interviews continue to enlighten audiences at several events, and he has appeared on dozens of radio and television shows, including Ancient Aliens, America Unearthed, Beyond Belief, and Mysteries of the Outdoors. Brad, welcome back, and how are you doing?
Hey, Chris, thanks for having me back. I'm doing great.
Man, it's great to have you back on. Every time you come back on, actually, we live in a little bit more of a ridiculous reality. Sometimes I think the simulation is broken and it needs a good reboot, but it always makes for good discussions, doesn't it?
That's for sure. Yeah, the world has become more sublime every time we talk.
Oh, yeah. And I thought it'd be fun today to discuss some of the high strangeness and some other events that occur at UFO conferences and, see what rabbit holes we can fall into from there. We were just talking how it's kind of been a little bit of a disappointing conference this year with everything being canceled. It doesn't look like we have much to look forward to. Maybe some online conferences like Forbidden Knowledge News Con. But how was conference season last year for you?
Well, about half canceled and half went through. It's kind of interesting. All of the conferences in blue states, all except for the Mount Shasta Summer Conference in California, all canceled or went to an online format, whereas those in red states usually went through with their program, and in almost all cases sold out shows. People really want to start coming back to conferences and really look forward to them, and even come up and thank us and the producers for coming out and doing it, because I think people are really lonely. They really miss that that high touch, that tactile feel you get from being at a conference, and quite frankly, I don't blame them. I miss it too.
Now, take us back, Brad. When did you first start doing these conferences as a presenter?
Well, I was actually presenting in bookstores in the 1990s when I first started doing book publishing for my Sacred Places series of books. So they were more organized like travel type presentations. My book, Sacred Places Europe, comes out. I do a whole presentation on Europe in a bookstore. But I was finding that the reach in bookstores is really about limited to the capacity of the crowd on hand, which is 20, 30, 40, 50 at most. Whereas conferences, you get into the hundreds and sometimes thousands. And then, of course, if they are live streamed, tens of thousands of people can watch you. So I changed my format from well, not only my book publishing schedule into these esoteric subjects, which I have 3 books on now, but also my conference schedule. This started to get me invited to speak at UFO conferences, because one of the books I did in the esoteric series, this one, Future Esoteric, has a lot to do with extraterrestrials and UFOs, how they fly and things like that. So I sent one to, right when that book came out in 2013, first edition, sent one to George Knapp, and he got me on Coast to Coast. And that really opened up my whole world of conferences, because shortly thereafter, Contact in the Desert came calling and many others. And as you know, things just kind of snowball once you get good at something and people recognize your name and like what you have to say, then they want to come out and hear you.
Oh, for sure. Have you noticed like a change in the overall mentality of some of these conferences as far as the subject matter goes? Maybe it used to be a little bit more nuts and bolts, and now they're kind of reaching more of the spiritual and consciousness crowd that used to be, strictly nuts and bolts, and it's kind of intermingling, it seems, a little bit. Do you find that as well?
Well, yeah, some of them have more of a new age slant. For example, the Sedona conference that I'm speaking at during the spring equinox will have more of a new age spiritual slant. In fact, it's even called the Sedona Ascension Retreat. So right there in the name, it's very much along those lines. And by the way, if people want to go to that, you can use Brad Olsen 10, number 10, and my name, Pradolsen, and get 10% off. And that is now going into a 4-day conference. So UFO Mega Conference canceled that next week. And now a lot of people are coming over the state line from Nevada and Vegas, where it was going to be, to Sedona, Arizona, a decidedly red state, and a lot of people coming over. So I think, Chris, to answer your question, it really depends on where that conference is going to be and what the focus of that conference is. So but UFO Mega Conference was going into other subject matter besides exopolitics and UFOs. So I think they all see that it's pretty advantageous to stretch the horizons as far as what can be talked about, including paranormal subjects, which I find very interesting.
Yeah, I think it's very cool that they're mixing in a lot of paranormal topics with ufology, because I think it's connected. I think there's huge connections with paranormal and ufology that needs to be considered, and it's good to see these researchers coming together on that. But something I want to touch on is we both know there are a lot of individuals in this kind of line of, I guess we could call it woo-woo type topics that are in it for, not the best reasons. Some of them want to, just get their name out there. Some of them want to cause misinformation. Some are intentionally put there to cause misinformation. Some think it's funny. Some think it's a joke. But there's a lot of people that unfortunately come into this type of community and for these conferences to muck around with things, and some of the presenters are actually there to do that. And I'm wondering over the years how it's been to see people like that come and go and be outed into the public. Is they always end up getting outed. They never last forever. The fraudsters, the ones that are there to not for the best reasons, they seem to never last, right?
That's true. And I've seen them come and go, and usually it's quite obvious who the infiltrators are. But the interesting thing about the conferences and these subjects that we speak about, is that they're really not covered in the mainstream very much. Or if they are, they're ridiculed or brushed off as being woo-woo. So in the conferences, it's almost like we're in this self-regulating environment that the fraudsters get outed and they get bounced out, and the people who are authentic or really are whistleblowers and delivering important information, they're the ones that stick around. And I've already seen several come and go in the decade or so that I've been presenting at conferences. It's been pretty interesting.
Yes, it has, and I think and especially in the last few years, we've been seeing just a surge of kind of not only things of that nature coming out, but truth in general coming out into the mainstream, and people kind of finding out of this. Like the veil is being lifted on everything surrounding everything, so it's really hard to kind of get over on this community now because we've seen it all come and go. We've seen the fraudsters come and go. We know kind of what to look for now, and there's still some people with some pretty incredible stories that I have to raise my eyebrows to sometimes, though.
And that's the whole thing about being in a self-regulating environment here, Chris. So in many ways, the audience is the judge and jury, and they
Yes.
will, like the Roman Colosseum, thumbs up or thumb
Yes.
down. And if it's thumbs down, those people don't get asked back. And we've seen that happen to a few people. There are also the infiltrators. We used to play this game, and perhaps still do, called Spot the Mole.
Ah.
And indeed, the alphabet agencies will send someone to come to conferences. And the saying is, they don't come to conferences to hear what we have to say. They come to conferences to hear what is not being said,
Mm.
because they're taking the pulse of how advanced our thinking and our research has become. And that kind of makes sense. So if we hit some real sensitive topics, well, that's going to ring some bells, and perhaps those alphabet agencies are going to come back and forth, or really be a little bit more heavy-handed on some of the conference presenters, and that has happened too.
Yeah, and while we're talking about the infiltration type of side of this, lately even I've noticed I've been to a few UFO conferences where they've had, and I'm not going to mention any names, they've had former intelligence individuals that used to work for military and used to be a part of our government and intelligence agencies that are now, for some reason, either their non-disclosure is up or they can do whatever they want now, but they're coming out and they're talking about things they've experienced. And to me, that's always kind of like there's always this in the back of my mind, this little red flag. Well, once you're part of these agencies, I would think at some level you're probably always going to be involved with them. So to what degree am I supposed to take the information that you're presenting at these conferences? And especially since, 2017, when this whole UFO thing really started to blow up in the mainstream, we started to see it in the newspapers and everything. More and more of these whistleblower types start coming out of the woodwork, and it's like, man, it makes me scratch my head. What's really going on here? So I like to pay close attention to that, and I like to look at all sides. It's very interesting, to say the least, what's happening with that, right?
Well, maybe whistles were on sale at Walmart, and all of a sudden they're all over the place.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just it, Chris. We have to look at this. You and I are in the category of researchers, right? We take data points, we try to condense them, make sense, look at patterns. And the whistleblowers are coming out of programs. So in many cases, they have taken oaths. They're part of the military. Sometimes they have NDAs, and whether they decide to go against that or not, it's their choice. But their reputation is staked upon the material that they are then being the whistleblowers of. We as a researcher are kind of one step lower in a way, but more protected, because all we're doing is trying to make sense of all this. But then you have people who are artists or channelers who are just basically bringing through this information, and they too can present, or musicians who write music about it. That's why I love these conferences, because you get so many different genres of people and inventors, and that usually in the area where the vendors are, people are displaying new kind of machinery, early renditions of med beds and other healing modalities. And I've purchased a few of them, including my own infrared sauna, which since November, when I bought it at the 5D conference, I've used it every single day when I've been back, as well as like a Tesla dermatological skin healer. And
Sweet.
it's worked really wonders for me there. So the things you can buy, you can only sometimes find at these conferences in the vendor section, which I find also one of the unique things about going to conferences.
For sure. And I want to get into maybe some of the stranger experiences you've had at conferences. But one thing that is mentioned every time I go to a conference from multiple presenters and multiple attendees is that they firmly believe that extraterrestrials are there attending these conferences and observing, or maybe even sometimes presenting. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, you could say that ultra terrestrials, which have the ability to phase in and out of our reality, that are really multidimensional entities, are everywhere all the time anyway. So perhaps they are, we just don't see them or can perceive them, but some people say they can. And then you have the CE5 experiences, which happen at some of these conferences. That's close encounters of the fifth kind. That means face to face with aliens. And while I have yet to see an alien appear, there was a time at Contact in the Desert, the last year they did it out at Joshua Tree, and Dr. Stephen Greer was doing a CE5, and I have some friends who were there, and they had to stay all night, and you can't bring your cell phone. They'd kick you out if they saw you with a phone. And all these things, they went into all these meditations and sometimes trances. And so my friend said, yeah, it was pretty darn weird. But around 3 a.m, she told me a little gray alien, just like in your background there, comes walking up on stage and shakes hands with Dr. Greer and whoever was still there. And more than half the people had already left by then, were absolutely stunned. And it was all the buzz of the conference the next day too. And that was Saturday night. So this was Sunday, the last day of the show. And a lot of people were like, wow, we have been visited. So like I said, I didn't see it with my own eyes, so I can't verify
No,
that.
I've never heard this. This is interesting. So a little gray alien went up to Dr. Greer and shook his hand at this conference?
That is how the story went. Yeah.
Interesting.
And Emery Smith does CE5 at conferences and a few other people. I guess if you have whatever, the mantra or the personality or the ability to summon these entities, and perhaps, like I said, they're ultra terrestrials and they're watching us the whole time. If they feel it's safe enough to appear, show themselves, maybe they do. But got to see it with my own eyes before I can say for sure that that's happened.
Now, speaking of seeing with my own eyes, last year's UFO Mega Conference was pretty incredible for me because I did see some incredible things that I've never seen before at any other conference or any time in my life, including one of the presentations from one of the gentlemen. I don't know if you're familiar with Trey Hudson. He works on the Meadow Project, and he investigates high strangeness there. It's a place kind of like Skinwalker Ranch. We were showing a video of his investigation team, Infrared, and they walked into basically a portal and disappeared. And it was the most incredible footage I've ever seen. They popped out the other side of it. Just looked like this black cube mass that they were walking into in the middle of a field. And that was pretty incredible. That's some of the most incredible stuff I've ever seen. As well as on the night sky watch, saw a few triangle craft, massive triangle craft passing over our heads that couldn't have been anything, that was known or known military craft or anything of that nature. And some other unknown lights. So the night sky watches were always phenomenal there. But what about you? What are some of the most incredible things that you've witnessed or encountered at conferences?
Well, on the same subject of the night watch, yeah, absolutely been some really incredible sightings. And at the Sedona event, Reverend John Polk, it's a good friend of mine, he leads UFO tours in Sedona, and his saying is, if you don't see something with our night vision goggles, you'll get your money back. And he says he has never, ever refunded anybody. So with those night vision goggles, as you know, you see things that you would not see with the naked eye, including things in the sky that flare up. And we did this up at the Seaseti Ranch with James Gilliland. All kinds of nighttime activity, and I was there for the Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis conference as a speaker. 2 nights in a row, we were just watching all this stuff, and it was just mind blowing. Same thing with the Mount Shasta Summer Conference. We'll go up to Panther Meadows, and well, last year was fire smoke, and they closed it off, so we couldn't do it. So we did it down by the lake, anyways. But it was really hazy. It was not a good night for viewing. But the summer conference before that, we were up there on Panther Meadows, and all of a sudden, 2 bright lights appear way up high on the mountain. And I had the opportunity of climbing Mount Shasta in 1997, and I know that face of the mountain. It's right where we went up. And this was above Horse Camp at about 12,000 feet, and these 2 bright orbs, and measuring how they were moving with the trees in the foreground, they just kind of did this, Chris. They just kind of went boop, boop, boop. Sort of moved back and forth way, way up high on the mountain. And look, there's no flashlight or people camping up there that could have done that. So once again, the jury's out on what these things are that we see at these sky watches at conferences. But another really cool aspect about coming to a conference and going out to do these.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I know that a lot of these conferences are held out west. And to me, there's something, I could just say, magical about the West. It's why I moved out here. There just seems to be this energy that doesn't exist in other parts of the United States. And I find it prevalent in lots of places out west, lots of places in California, Utah, Colorado, Nevada, New Mexico. Just in some of these high desert places, you just feel this, magnificent energy. And I'm wondering if you feel the same thing, and is that why, these conferences are so great in these areas?
That's a great question, Chris. And you could say that it is because of the people who do have more of a penchant for these subjects, being open to them, that perhaps that has something to do with, as far as in the night sky watches, these lights and whatever else appearing, because people are open to it. Look, if you're not open to it, it's like the old analogy of when Christopher Columbus first arrived off of the coast of Hispaniola. It was said that the Indians could not see his ship because they had no construct for what that ship could be. Similarly, in this modern age, you could watch a UFO go streaking by and just not even put it together or sign it off as to an airplane, helicopter, meteorite, something like that. So I think when you're open to these subjects, people have more of an idea of what they might be seeing. And so in the example of the Columbus ships, once people were taken aboard the boat and came back and told the other tribes people, then they saw it, then they all knew. But of course, they treated them as gods, as we might with a direct UFO encounter of some kind of magical, technical ability to come to our space and show themselves. And if you think about it, perhaps this is the reason why extraterrestrials really don't want to have that big show landing on the White House lawn or anything else, because they did, we might take them as gods and worship them as such, and rather than hopefully trying to learn from them and understand their motives for coming here.
Right. And the more I learn about the experience, the more I realize it's such a personal experience, and it seems to be connected with each individual's consciousness. And the most profound experiences happen when, people are usually alone and they don't experience it together, although they have some rare occurrences, like you said, where gray aliens are coming up to shake Dr. Greer's hand, but not all the time that you get those. Most of the time it's you're by yourself or the person is by themselves, and they'll have this profound experience. But I think that's the way it's actually supposed to be, if we really want to get something personal out of this experience,
Sure. And perhaps in a way we might be deluding ourselves too. You can't even argue that a child in a gray costume went up to see Dr. Greer at 3 a.m. when most people were real tired and bleary-eyed to begin with. I'm not saying that was what happened, but as a researcher, we have to look at this from every single angle and try to find if there may be some skullduggery involved and cancel that out for
Yeah,
what it
for
is.
sure. One of my favorite aspects, while we're still talking about conferences about these things, I've only been to a few, but every one I've been to had the same type of feeling of acceptance and community, and that you could talk to all these individuals that were around you about anything you wanted, and there wouldn't be any judgment, and there's so much similarities, and just the sense of community was so strong at every single conference that I've went to. That was my favorite part about everything. No matter what the presentation was or anything like that, they just had this sense of kind of open-mindedness and togetherness that I've really never experienced anywhere else, and that was really my favorite part about conferences.
That's true. The friendships made and the information gathered from the speakers is really invaluable. And since we are in this self-governing kind of community, what we have to say about each other is really relevant and important to share that information. And just about every conference, you'll hear the buzz of all the people saying, "Oh, did you go to see so-and-so? And when they talked about such and such, boy, that was mind-blowing." There'll be the favorites, and then there'll be the duds who people didn't really think did too well. And conversely, those people sometimes never come back.
Oh yeah, for sure. Now, what about? I want to talk about some of the topics that are presented at UFO conferences, and your thoughts on some of these things. One of the big ones is a secret space program, and I think this is actually one of the more kind of controversial ones, because
Yeah.
first of all, there's zero proof of most of the information that comes out from the supposed whistleblowers that present the information, and some of it is so far out there it sounds like straight off a Star Trek movie. But again, who are we to say that this information isn't true? It could very well be true. We don't have anything to disprove it either, and some of the recall from these individuals is so fantastic. I can tell that a lot of these people, they believe wholeheartedly what they're saying about, they've been to Mars, they've been, in some kind of program, a 20 and back program where their consciousness was transferred, and they've been in jump rooms and med beds, all this incredible stuff that you'd think you'd only see on the most strange sci-fi movie, but these people have apparently believed that they've done it. Now, I would like to get your thoughts on some of these stories and the secret space program, because that's a big part of a lot of these conferences lately.
Well, it sure is. And I've actually had the very good fortune of being a moderator on some of these secret space program panels. And I suppose the reason I get asked back to be the moderator is because I'm open-minded. I'm not judging anyone. I really just want to try to get the best information. And sometimes when you're seeing someone at a table and you're face to face and you're making eye contact, you can really start to get a feel for who they are and their information. You can pick up little things, or if they're nervous, if they're having a hard time with speech or getting things out. I've seen some of them on the verge of tears. And actually, if they're not an A-list actor with abilities to turn it on, turn it off, then they're obviously emotionally charged about these subjects. And you're right, what we're talking about is very out there and literally, but really kind of cutting edge, because, hey, 2 years ago, we announced a new arm of the military force called Space Force. So look, we're doing it. We have an actual above ground program that has humans going into outer space as part of this Space Force. So to me, that has verified many of these accounts that these people have been working on these programs before it went public with Space Force, that Solar Warden has been around for decades. And even before that, the Germans had technology that is beyond our wildest dreams, and they're the Rokfin and Penny Bradley's came out of that program, and she spoke quite prolifically at conferences about it. But sometimes you get someone who maybe does just want the attention and says, oh yeah, I'm Secret Space Force too. But what I notice is before the panel, and then oftentimes on the panel, the new guy gets questioned and judged by the other people on the panel who are kind of more vetted and more veterans at the conferences. Mm-hmm. So they're kind of also very particular about who they think is a real one or is a fake one. And I've seen them talking even before we go on the mic and conferring about some experiences they had or the jargon that they use. And if they can walk the walk and talk the talk together, then they're usually part of the same program.
Right. Yeah, and it is unfortunate that they have the individuals that are trying to, I guess you could say, infiltrate this, because some of them are really good and some of them have gotten really far with the information they tried to pass forth. And I'm not going to put forth any names, but there's been a few in recent years that have gotten on pretty big networks and gotten some information out there that led a lot of people in the wrong direction. And now they're in some big trouble, of course, because, you know, like we talked about earlier, they're always going to be found out if they're not legit. But, you know, the interesting side, like we were just saying, for these people who truly believe their stories and they actually have information that they presented that can be backed up, and you can look at certain things and be like, oh, this is true, and it's very fascinating, and there's some correlations that you can put forward with things that happen with our military and things that are actually going on with what we would call the Space Force. So this is a very interesting aspect to me. And you mentioned the Nazis. You actually write about this, you know, some of the Nazi UFO tech in your book and what happened during World War II. I'd like to kind of get a little bit into that and get your thoughts on the depth of that and its correlations to what could be going on with our secret space program, if that is a real thing, because supposedly there's major links to the German Breakaway Society and what's happening with the secret space program, right?
Sure, absolutely. Great segue there, Chris, because keep in mind, we brought over hundreds of Nazis after World War II under Project Paperclip. Some of them were in the MK Ultra psychiatry programs, Brookhaven Institute, and so forth, that were working on mass indoctrinating people, including MK Naomi, the actual giving of serum. No, we have to be careful with our words here. And also you had Reinhard Gehlen, who came over here, should have been on the Nuremberg trials for war crimes, comes over here to help start up the CIA. But by far, the largest majority of those paperclip Nazis that came over here that started up NASA were rocket scientists. Werner von Braun and Hermann Oberth, who said we had help from the people above, that are saying straight up that they were backward engineering ET tech, as well as getting information from the Vril Society that were channeling the Aldebaran star people and getting technology this way. So the backstory is fascinating. And the fact that the Nazis had recovered downed craft in the 1930s in the Black Forest, as well as getting a nearly intact craft from Mussolini in the late 1930s and that came down in the Lombardy region, that went to their Skoda works, where they were working on backward engineering right up till the end of the war. And then all that stuff just went missing. So look, this is about 75 years ago. You've got this incredible amount of high technology devices gone missing, presumably to South America and Antarctica. Then you have the Battle of High Jump, where these crafts reportedly came right up out of the water that manipulated the gravity around them, including the water. So they came up dry pretty much, and then were not able to be shot down, and in a show of force, sliced one of the destroyers in half and then Admiral Byrd and the whole flotilla, they got out of there 2 months into their 6 month expedition. So there's a lot of these, well, they're anecdotal, but they do kind of tie together into a bigger picture that humans are very interested in this, especially the military. Why do you think it's all top secret? And they would want to put disinformation out there. They would want to have people come to conferences even and perhaps tell you 90% of mind-blowing information, but that 10% is the red herring where they want to get you off the track. That's the whole definition of disinformation, is giving you a lot of good stuff, but that one red herring that they don't want you talking about or thinking about or knowing the reality of is what they're really there for.
Now, you mentioned Penny Bradley earlier, and I've had her on a couple of times. Her story is definitely fascinating, and if correct, apparently the Nazi breakaway society is still very powerful and in operation off planet on possibly the moon and Mars, right?
That is what Penny says, as well as some others who know of the Nachtwaffen. And on the backside of the moon is the Luna base that William Cooper spoke of, that's in the shape of a swastika that they had help with extraterrestrials in building. Well, the German secret space program is on the wane. They were allied, as this narrative goes, allied with the reptilian forces. And as those underground bases and those that hardware gets taken off line and knocked out, they're on the run. So they're losing their power here to the Solar Warden and the other groups up there. And it's interesting that there were reports in Antarctica this off season. So of course seasons are opposite there. Our summer is their winter, and McMurdo is the largest base run by the Americans. There were reports of these lower level Germans fleeing the continent, had to get out of there quick. And that was also concurrent with when Gene Decode was talking about taking out the bases, always around 10 kilometers in depth. And sometimes you can see the earthquakes and they line up in a straight line. And those were the maglev tunnel tubes. So concurrently with taking out the tube lines into and out of Antarctica, they were conceivably destroying these bases and taking them out of their stronghold, which is down there, the Empire Under the Ice. And as you know, I traveled to Antarctica 3 years ago and wrote about it in my book and have a lot of information on that. And sometimes I'll do a 2-hour show and we'll just talk about Antarctica the whole time. So I'm fascinated with the idea that there could be a whole disruption in the power structure down there, and that some of these under ice bases may be getting taken out.
Now, one of the big kind of arguments that a lot of researchers within this community have, and even one of the researchers that I'm very good friends with and colleagues with, argues that, Hitler died, and I have many on the other side saying that he didn't, that he went on to live in Argentina. And, the one researcher I'm referring to saying, well, no, they found his teeth. He has a very unique set of teeth that they couldn't reproduce, so he has to be dead. I'm like, well, if they had the technology to build UFOs, you don't think they could make a set of teeth? I don't know. So what do you think? Do you think Hitler, alive or dead? I wasn't dead now, but was alive after the war?
Oh, yeah, he escaped. There's a whole series, a 3-season series called Hunting Hitler, if people want to really get into the details of all of this and all the locations and all the proof. When I was going down to Antarctica, I bought a car there. I bought a Ford Expedition that I could camp out of and cook meals and, of course, transportation and so forth. So I had the real freedom of going anywhere I wanted. And one of the things I was really interested in researching when I was down there was all the presumed Nazi locations. And one of those places is a town called La Falda, and it's up in the hills above Cordoba, Argentina. And in La Falda is a big grand hotel. It's called the Eden Hotel, and many dignitaries have stayed there. And there are pictures of the Einhorn family having dinner with Hitler, and they were like in the inner circle and so forth. So I took the tour, and fortunately the tour guide could speak English real well. They can't always communicate. My Spanish is terrible. So fortunately I could ask him questions. One of my questions was, do you think Hitler survived? He goes, oh, I don't even think it. I know it. I said, well, how do you know it? He said, well, right here in town of La Falda is elderly woman who was a chambermaid here in Eden Hotel, and she remembers Hitler and Eva Braun and Martin Bormann. They were here. They stayed after the war, and so they moved him around. And if you watch the Hunting Hitler TV episodes, you'll see all the kind of places. And I even went to get as close as I could to the Inalco house near San Carlos de Bariloche in Patagonia region of Argentina. And while you can't get down there to see it, they do take a boat up to the house, and they show these stovepipes where an underground base was. They show the ramp where the seaplane was. So if the authorities were ever moving in on them, they could just jump in the seaplane, fly over the crest of the Andes Mountains and be in Chile. And all these dictators were being set up in the 60s and 70s. Pinochet in Chile, man, that guy was as fascist as you can be, and he was propped up by our CIA. So there was a deal that was struck with them. And there are also massive land tracts in Chile and Argentina that are basically micronations that nobody can penetrate or get into, but have been bought up by the Germans, who have all the money down there. There was a funny joke because all their Native American people, unlike Peru and Bolivia, where a lot of native culture is still alive, but in Argentina and Chile, 1% of Native Americans have survived. So really, it's all Europeans that migrated over there, most especially Greeks and Italians. So the joke is, who are we, the Argentinians? And it is, we're Italians who speak Spanish and wish we were as rich as the Germans. And that's who they are down there. It's still true.
Man. Man, that's so interesting. Now, when we're talking about the Project Paperclip and what happened afterwards, well, basically, we brought over these scientists and formed NASA and integrated them into all aspects of our government and different secret factions and even corporations and things of that nature. But I think with NASA, I'm not even sure we even went to space at all. I think we redirected all that money to black projects that could include space travel. But it would probably be secret space travel or interdimensional travel, or putting all of these funds that were supposed to go to NASA's regular space travel to all these dark projects, MK Ultra, CERN, and all these black things that they're doing besides that. And I don't even think, like I said, I'm not even sure we even went to space in the traditional way that they were saying, at least. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, if you see the astronauts right after they came back from the Apollo 11 mission, they're all dour and frowning at the press conference like, you guys should be elated. Look at Sir Edmund Hillary after he got to the top of Mount Everest with his Nepalese partner. They were all smiles and celebrating. But so that part doesn't make sense. But you try to tell Buzz Aldrin to swear on a Bible that he went to the moon, you might get smacked in the face, Chris.
Yeah.
Done that before.
Right on, yeah.
And I actually met him at a conference about 10 years ago. It was a travel conference, and he was there. And of course, he was surrounded with a bunch of people, and he had something to promote. I can't remember what. And then finally he left his booth and he started walking the aisles, and I just kind of shadowed him. And then after about 5 or 10 minutes, like, who's this tall guy following me around? And finally I had an opportunity to ask him a question, which I had heard happened on the way back with the lunar module. And I said, Buzz, is it true that the lunar module was followed by orbs, and they may have even penetrated into the capsule. And he just looked at me with these piercing blue eyes, and he didn't say yes, but he didn't say no. And it was this kind of like the feeling I got was, how did you know that kind of thing? And so, I didn't want to get slugged, so I sort of backed off. But
yeah,
there's a lot of weirdness. And yeah, you're right. There is a debate whether we could even take a capsule out beyond the Van Allen belt, that it would have got zapped by radiation, and so on and so forth. But then there's the other field of research here with a lot of the 20 and back guys, the secret space program, that, well, not only did we get out there in the 1960s with the Apollo mission to the moon, but the Nazis, if history were really to tell itself correctly, were the first to the moon, probably in the 30s or 40s. They had the technology with these backward engineered craft. And isn't it interesting that they always come back as disc shaped, right? Yeah. They're always pretty much the same things. And so there was this big data dump in 1989 to a researcher in London, where all the Haunebu, the Vril craft, the photos of these craft went to this researcher, and then he just did a data dump as is. Here it all is, including this blueprint of the Haunebu craft. And a lot of researchers today feel that the flyover of DC was actually the Antarctica Nazis, who could fly pole to pole at incredible speeds, according to Admiral Byrd spilling the beans to a Chilean journalist right after high jump. So maybe we've had this technology for a long time, Chris, but you can understand why they would want to keep it top secret and also infect this whole field with disinformation.
Oh yeah, right on. And it's a whole kind of, I think it's been a multi-generational type of planned thing after, World War II and after Paperclip and all these events to get us to the place we are now, really. And I think that it's, part of this, possibly this agreement that Eisenhower maybe had with off-planet entities or interdimensional beings or extraterrestrials or whatever you want to call it, because I get more and more, I don't want to say confirmation, but more and more researchers are looking into this and saying yes, that he really did have this secret agreement with off-planet beings. What do you think?
Well, and then we both know his great-granddaughter Laura Eisenhower, and she talks about him at her lectures. And in my capacity as a book publisher with CCC Publishing, I'm going to be releasing Laura's first 3 books. And we had this discussion just a week ago. I said, Laura, look, there's a lot of interest in what your great-grandfather did in regards with the extraterrestrials, MJ-12, and how the secrecy state evolved. And I said, you gotta include this stuff or do a whole book on it. She said, oh, don't worry, it's going to be well integrated into all 3 of the books. So really look forward to that. But to your point, once again, you can see how the top secret clearance level and how important it was to keep all this under wraps really was. For example, in NATO, the very highest clearance level is called cosmic top secret. And that is anything to do with extraterrestrials or backward engineered craft. So I think when you look at the big picture here, Chris, there are so many data points all over the place that we have been backward engineering this machinery and putting it into our own arsenals. Unfortunately, it's been used mostly for military applications. But really, look, if we were going to be the Star Trek future, who I think we are destined to be, and our Star Trek future is being hijacked from us right now, we could use these ships to go and explore the cosmos as they did in Star Trek. And Gene Roddenberry, he was going to the Council of Nine seances in the 1950s and writing notes in the back with people were speaking with humans in our future. And that was 350 years in our future. Now it's less than 300 years. And the Star Trek series is humans exploring the universe. So I'm still putting out my hope that this is who we are and what we can do with this. And that we do, according to Ben Rich, for example, who was head of the Lockheed Martin Skunk Works out at Area 51, that we have technology beyond your wildest dreams. We have technology to take ET home already. And this is at the end of the 1980s, he said this on his deathbed. Just had one of those moments where he felt like he had to get this off his chest, and a good thing he did, because he told us that they had a lot of backward engineered technology, and that's 40 years ago.
Right. And it makes you wonder, what are they showing us now with the Tic Tac and all the footage that they're coming out now with the Pentagon? Could this just be ours, and they're showing us this for a reason, because they want to roll out more of their tech? Or, are they showing this because they know something that they can't control is going to happen? I don't know. And, we recently, before the new year, the Pentagon opened up a new department to look into UAPs. It's like they throw this stuff out there at us, and then they reel it back, and they're like, no, it's just swamp gas. But this could be something. But no, it's just Russia. And we never get any real answers from that. But it is interesting to see them kind of throw the stuff out there. But I don't know. Do you think they even know what the hell they're dealing with at a certain level? Because I hear senior members of Congress and the military saying it's freaking demons. We got to watch out. So I don't even think a lot of these individuals know what the hell they're dealing with.
Well, you got to think, Chris, with something as big of a subject as this, the military is losing their credibility, and so is NASA. Like, NASA was the acronym Never a Straight Answer. We can never get a real good answer about any of this stuff. So in a way, I think they feel like they have to roll out these grainy videos. And isn't it interesting? They're never really totally concise and real smoking guns, so to speak. They're always really kind of vague and far away, and you can't make out the details, kind of thing. But perhaps that's by design, meaning that they're giving us these little nuggets just to get us off their tail and leave them alone. Oh, hey, we're trying to give you guys the information you're requesting through freedom of information and so forth. We're trying to be real transparent with it all, but we don't know for sure ourselves. So do you remember IBM? They had the most famous salesman ever. I went to business college and we learned about IBM, Big Blue, as they were called. And they had the most famous fleet of salespeople that would go in and sell their copy machines. And and we studied this in business college, the FUD factor. That's fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And I think the FUD factor also plays into the media's role in disclosing this, as well as the government's role in disclosing this. There's always the FUD factor. There's always a little fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Like I said, the demons are coming at us. The uncertainty of, well, we can't really make out that grainy video, and therefore we doubt if it's real. So until we get some really precise footage that comes from them, I think it's all just to kind of get us to back down, so we stop doing it. But I've often said, Chris, that disclosure comes from the ground up, that we don't need these entities to tell us what's real or what's not. You go to these conferences and you hear speakers for 3 or 4 days presenting evidence and showing real videos, and you come away from that thinking, okay, we know there's something here, and we know there's something being hidden.
Oh, yeah, for sure, man. And do you think that anytime within our lifetime that it could shift to where, they're not controlling the narrative anymore, and that we're going to know no matter what? Maybe some event happens. I don't know. Maybe something else gets leaked out. Who knows? Do you think we may have specific answers in our lifetime, and it may just be a normal thing,
Well, doesn't it seem that there are just more and more UFO videos, even just people filming them on their cell phones? More and more and more are popping up all the time. So it does seem to be coming to a crescendo, or perhaps critical mass, where there's just so many of these videos, and they can't all be fakes, that the people are, like I said, disclosures coming from the ground up, are just making their own mind on this and saying, yeah, look, we know that government's not going to tell us the full answer on this, and perhaps they can't, because they do have non-disclosure agreements, and they want to try to keep this information to themselves, because we still have these perceived enemies in other countries. Well, maybe when everything starts to change, and if the human race can embrace itself as one family, as other extraterrestrial races do, where nobody falls through the cracks, nobody gets left behind, nobody goes to sleep starving every night. I mean, even the reptilians take care of all their own. Nobody is left behind there. Everybody finds a place to work or do something. That's not the case with humans. So maybe we've just had the pot stirred so much artificially. A great example is that if you put red ants and black ants into a jar, they'll just go about and do what they have to do. They don't intermingle, they don't mate or anything like that, but they work separately. But if you shake up the jar, they start to fight each other because they think the other was responsible for it. And I think that's a good analogy about what's happened with humans. We have just been agitated with the jar shaking all the time for us to think it's us versus them, and how we have to demonize our enemies when we go into war to kill them. And that all has to come to an end if we're going to enter into this golden age, this 1,000 years of peace and abundance, our Star Trek future.
Right on. You're exactly right. And you mentioned, what's at the top of this? Is it evil humans? Is it evil reptilians? Is it something else? Is it something more on a spiritual level? What is at the top that's controlling the malevolent aspects of the manipulation of our reality? And I don't know. I think humans can get pretty evil. But are they the ones at the top of this? Who knows? I mean, there's plenty that say, especially that have been involved in these secret space programs, that it's off-planet entities that are kind of pulling some of these strings,
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, just looking at that gray alien behind you there and the size of their heads, their psi abilities, PSI, psychic abilities, are just so much more advanced than we are. Not to say that we couldn't be that advanced, because so much has been withheld from us. I mean, how advanced would humans be if, say, in kindergarten, we started learning about the energy chakras in our bodies? In first grade, we started learning how to communicate telepathically. In second grade, we started bending spoons with telekinesis. So these abilities are there. We have just been withheld, and it's been kept from us. So that's really part of the problem, is that we have been kept in this box. And that's why the subtitle of my book is Escaping Prison Planet. But if these technologies and abilities soon came to the human race and we started to practice them and do these sort of things, we could ascend to 5D, make that jump right over the 4D, and then make this a prism planet. And I would like to say, I hope to see that in my lifetime.
For sure, man. And I think it's achievable. It just depends on everybody's mindset. I think right now we have a great portion of humanity on the upswing. Consciousness is rising for a lot of people. A lot of people are coming into their own. I think they have NPCs that are kind of popping online, and people are coming into themselves. So I think it's a really fantastic time right now. But on the other hand, there are some people in the downswing and going down to the other levels and just kind of becoming part of the system, part of the program. So I think we live in a very critical time as well, where people have to make the decision where they want to go and which way, and what team they want to be a part of,
Yep, that's true. Hey, can I tell you my favorite conference weird story?
Of course, man.
Well, so I was at the Awareness Life Expo in Cottonwood, Arizona. and I was out at the vendor tables, and John D'Souza, who I really like. I think he's a great guy and has given really important information. But he was former FBI, so he comes out of the letter agencies, and take that for what you will. But so we were out there at the vendor tables, and then this elderly guy comes up, and John recognizes him. They greet each other and give each other a hug. And I'm pretty close. I'm within 5-10 feet away and did not recognize him. So then about a half hour later, John D'Souza was presenting, and I'm sitting on the other side of the hall, and this guy comes in, and it's John Alexander, and he's kind of the dark side. He worked with in those programs, and he's got a couple books, which some people say is disinformation, and he knew what was that guy that's very satanic that brought the satanic church into the army?
Yeah. Oh gosh. Now that you said it, I know who you're talking about, though. Yeah.
It'll come. So John Alexander, he comes in, and then later on, we're out at the tables again, and I went up and said hi to him, and I actually have some quotes from him in my book, Future Esoteric, and gave him a copy, and he said thanks, and took a picture together, and that picture went up on Facebook, and Leo Lyons-Agami, another author that I publish at CCC Publishing, said this thick Italian accent. He goes, "Hey, Brad, I don't think I really agree with your choice of friends there." And I go, "Well, Leo, you know the old Machiavellian saying, keep your friends close and your enemies closer." Oh, okay, Brad, I get you now.
Michael Aquino. Okay.
Michael Aquino, yes.
Yeah.
John Alexander and Michael Aquino. Yeah.
For sure, man. Yeah. Wow. That's super interesting.
So when I told my friends that I originally saw John Alexander really close up but didn't recognize him, they're like, "Dude, he shapeshifted on you. He was keeping himself private." I'm like, I cannot confirm or deny.
Yeah. Oh man. That's great. I think that's a perfect story to end on. Brad, always awesome talking with you. Before you head out, let the audience know you got anything interesting upcoming, working on any books or anything of that nature.
I am publishing Michael Jaco's 4-book series and Laura Eisenhower's 3-book series, and those are coming down the pipeline right now. So in my editorial capacity, we'll be working on that. Boy, doing 1 or 2 interviews a day in support of Beyond Esoteric. And for all the books that I publish, you can go to cccpublishing.com. That's 3 C's and publishing, 1 word. And if they're my books, I sign copies for people as they go out the door. If you want to know about the conferences and other projects that I work on, bradolsen.com. And I have Mystic Minds coming up in San Jose next month. And as I said, the Sedona Ascension Retreat, use the promo code BradOlsen10. If you want to get a discount and come to that. I'm also speaking at the Mount Shasta Summer Conference in early July. And if people want a discounted ticket, they can contact me through the contact form on CCC Publishing, and I'll let them know how they can do that. So we've got some shows coming up. I'm also speaking out your way at the Gaia Sphere Conference in September, and then
oh man, I'll be there
in October. Yeah, we'll be hanging out then. That's right in your neck of the woods.
Awesome, man. Well, can't wait. Well, thanks again. Fantastic time, and we'll be doing it again soon.
You bet, Chris. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Until next time, everyone, have an excellent evening. We'll talk again tomorrow.